Holy smokes, it worked. You're listening to the Rec.poker podcast. Thanks everyone for joining us this week. I'm Jim Reid, your host. And if you don't know what Rec.poker is, it's a free community that you can join to talk to other serious recreational players about your love of poker. We like to learn together. We like to steal each other's chips and get better by playing together and learning together. And we have a lot of fun doing it. So come on over to rec.poker and sign up for a free account today. I want to thank our sponsors, Running Aces and website AMP. We couldn't do what we do without them. And I want to thank everyone else who's involved in the wrecking crew over here. Like I said, I'm Jim Reid, Bluffsterini in the home game, but it takes a village to do what we do at Rec.poker. And we've got a whole crew of folks that chip in every week to share some expertise, some time, and talk poker with this crew. Why don't you tell the world where they can find you?
I'm Chris Jones. You can find me 5B5 on Twitter and 5x5 on PokerStars.
And I'm John Somsky. I'm Poker Geek MN everywhere.
I'm Keith Brandt, and I'm Monkey System everywhere.
And I'm Rob Washam, and I'm Radman50 everywhere.
Thanks, gang. So every week we get together and we talk poker. Here on the forums edition of the show, every week we take a post from the Rec.poker forums and talk about it here on the air. So this time we're going to take a look at a post by a community member, Epictetus, a Stoic, it seems. Rob and I are already fans of this player. You know we love our Stoic philosophers here at Rec.poker. So Epictetus writes, "Good evening all. First time post, but long time admirer. I don't have any poker friends around me and therefore have nowhere to discuss or analyze hands or strategies than here. I hear you, man. That's what we do here at Rec.poker. We get together and talk poker because sometimes your friends and family just don't know enough about poker to make you a better poker player. It's true, hard to believe, but it's true. So Epictetus is talking about a hand where he's playing in the UK. He's got AK offsuit in late position, and he's doing pretty well in a deep stack tournament. This is live there in the UK. In this case, they're at level 9. The tournament started with 50 players and they're down to 30. And our hero correspondent has a top 5 chip stack. So he's been doing pretty well chipping up throughout. At this point, 30 left, 8 paid. So we're still quite a ways off the money. We get into an interesting position where we're in the low jack and the under the gun player just open shoves 18 big blinds. We look down, we see ace king offsuit. We're obviously ahead of a lot of that player's possible holdings, but we're not closing the action. And it's kind of an awkward size to re-raise with. When we're facing action like this, gang, what are you thinking about when you look down and see that ace king and you know you've got the 3 options on how to proceed?
Well, the first thing I think about is isolating. I don't want to necessarily get involved with ace king in a multi-way pot. I think in most cases, you're going to be at the worst case scenario. He's got aces or kings, but 99% of the time you're going to be up against either a smaller pocket pair or some, suited connectors, some big broadways, maybe a ace 9 type hand. The guy only has 29 big blinds. He's might be getting a little desperate, might feel like, hey, I'm either going to double up or go home, and you never know. So the first thing I would do is look at the chip stacks of the people remaining to act behind me. And if they're all small, that where I would feel comfortable calling them off, because I think, what does he have? He's got he must have 60 big blinds, 60, 70 big
he's
blinds.
Got a ton for sure.
So I would look at all the other chip stacks, and if they're all in that 20 big blind range, I would feel very comfortable just jamming over the top to isolate, not concerned if anybody calls behind. If there's a big stack behind, I think there's an opportunity to not necessarily commit all your chips with an isolation raise, where you could just isolate and just make a normal 3-bet to and you don't have to 3-bet like a normal size 3-bet against an all-in like this. You just have to raise maybe even just a min raise over the top of what he did. That way you're telling everybody, hey, I've got a hand, I'm willing to play it against this. If you want to come in, you better luck out because I'm here. Whereas a limp doesn't say that. The limp just says, okay, let's play. I'll see a flop. So it might deter others from trying to isolate over the top of you. And again, you're not committing your entire chip stack, where a large chip stack behind you could give you some issues. So that's the way I would look at it. And that's the way I would play it.
Yeah, and people talk about ace king as being that kind of hand where you're better off getting it in as the raiser than as the caller, adding some fold equity and some of that blocker value. So it's definitely valuable in that way. If we were feeling trappy in a spot like this, what kind of hands would we want to have instead? Is there some magical cutoff where this villain shoved 18 big blinds? Is it aces? Is it kings? Is it ace king suited? Is it queens? Chris, what do you think about that kind of stuff?
For me, it's sort of kings plus. If there's a really it depends about the players behind me. But more standard, it's kings plus. And then if there's some really wild players behind me, I might drop that down a bit.
We've been joined by Kim Kilroy. Thanks for coming in, Kim.
Yeah, sorry I'm late. Driving across Florida.
Oh, right. Yeah, no kidding. Well,
Yeah.
thanks for joining us. And we're just talking about this hand where we're holding ace king and we get an 18 big blind shove
Right.
from early position. What are you thinking about when that
I
comes around?
saw this. I would always re-raise here as
Yep.
one of the big stacks on the table. And also in this level, we're nowhere near the money.
Right.
Like nowhere near the money. We're just trying to build stacks. So I'm happy to re-raise this. And then we're nicely priced in to call off if the guy still shoves behind us. So
Mhm.
that's how I feel about it. And I don't really like the flat, especially with ace king offsuit. Like
Yeah.
maybe ace king suited as a trap and aces and kings
Mhm.
perhaps, but ace king offsuit, I really like a re-raise.
Yeah, and I think by re-raising also, you might, the guy that jammed over the top might be less inclined to do that had we tried our own isolation move by raising.
Yeah, and I don't think we actually said what happened in because we started talking about what we would do here, but what actually
Right.
happened in the hand itself was our correspondent flatted, and then the big stack behind, I think on the button, was it on the button? I can't remember where it was, but the big stack behind who he covered, but it was the second biggest at the table, then shoved over the top. And now we've got a little bit. I don't think we have much of a decision. We probably at this point we've committed 18 big blinds. We've got a really good hand, but we're in a much more awkward position here. And we can be when we shove ourselves, we're going to fold out some hands that may take this line, or put them in some very difficult spots. So I agree. I like the raise or shove here. And I'm really I am more intrigued by doing this with some raises rather than shoves. And then I think we can occasionally find a fold against the exact right kind of opponent. If that big stack is that, just that opponent we know just is never doing this light, and we've already raised, I think those are the spots where we could maybe find a fold, but I think I don't find folds here very often. in that
Right. The
spot.
problem is with finding a fold, say we raise it to like 36 big blinds or 35 big
Right.
blinds, and the stack rips it in for 65 big blinds, then they have to have, if we're going to find a fold, they can only be doing it with aces and kings. Like
Right.
if they're doing it with queens and jacks, we just have to call off.
Right, exactly. So it has to be that exact
Right.
opponent that you just started like, this is nothing but aces or kings.
But
And
this
then-
sounds like an opponent, from what he said in this, it sounds like an opponent that's been getting it in a few times.
Yeah. What did you say here? The under the gun player was nitty, but the button player hadn't been overly active. and rips it in. So I don't think we can say that they're
Okay, he hadn't
particularly
been overly
aggressive.
active, sorry, yeah.
That's good. And it is for about 80% of our stack. So we're still the chip leader, but it's the only other player at the table that really threatens our stack. And
I would rip it in with 9s, 10s, jacks, queens here when somebody flatted, because there's dead money as far as I'm concerned.
as the button player, you mean when?
Yes,
Yes.
yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
why we want to be trapping occasionally with hands like aces, but not, I think, necessarily hands that are not that strong.
I
like aces.
love flatting with aces here. This is just a dream spot to flat with aces.
Sure.
Because you can't lose. You're up against this all in who's put 18 big blinds in, and if somebody shoves again, it's like it's awesome.
So then let me ask you this then. Are you guys ever raising with aces here? Or are you always calling with aces? And if so, can't we kind of shove over your raising range in an exploitative fashion if we know that you're always trapping with aces and kings?
Yeah, no, I'm
Yeah, it has-
sometimes raising with aces.
Yeah, it has a lot to do with the chip stacks, stack sizes of everybody at the table, really.
Yeah.
If you're sitting there with 40 big blinds, you're just jamming it in, whether you have aces or not.
Good point. Yeah, good point. And then on the other side of it, what are the other hands that we're going to be calling with? So we've kind of described our range that's calling with a mixed strategy with the real nuts, aces and kings, and then it's raising with ace king and other hands like that, and then it's probably calling with some other hands. What kind of hands would you guys advise to call in that spot? Or is it just, or should we not? 18 big blinds is just not the right number to be. We're either calling with aces or with nothing.
No, there's probably some calling hands there.
Yeah. What would be good? What would be some good candidates for that? Medium pocket pairs or suited.
I mean, they're probably
connectors, or-
they're probably those kinds of hands, the kinds of hands that we're actually planning to fold to an overshove.
Right.
So that's why we need to have aces in our range to protect ourselves. But like, maybe it is like the 8s and 9s of the world, which we don't mind going up if everyone folds behind us and we're up against the opener. We're probably okay. We're probably flipping or something like that. But against a shove, we're not feeling great about that kind of hand. So maybe sometimes we flat that, but those are also hands that like are okay to jam. Like Kim was saying, I think that we can sometimes raise those as well. So it's probably a mix of some of those kind of like those medium pocket pairs, though, the 8s, 9s, 10s that we might find a flat.
Okay, and then to get at this another way, what's the best hand that we're not continuing with to this action, whether it's as a call or a range or as a raise? What's the hand that we're?
I think
side
as played, I would fold ace king offsuit here.
Oh, to the reshove?
Yeah.
Yeah, I meant, sorry, Kim. I meant to
Yeah,
the
sorry.
original 18 big blind open.
Okay.
What's the worst hand? What's the best hand that we're gonna let go?
Ace
What's
jack.
the bottom of our range? Ace jack?
Ace jack off.
I'd say pocket 7s.
Yeah, sevens,
Maybe pocket
maybe
eights.
8s, 7 or 8s, and ace jack. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes
that
Chris
sounds like
and
the
I
right
just agree.
Yeah, well, you guys know what you're talking about, so it's good news either way for the rest of us. Whether you two agree or disagree, I like it.
I know you like it when we don't. That makes for a better podcast, but
that's right. Okay, so it feels like, it feels like we're kind of, when someone shoves 18 big blinds from under the gun, it feels like we just can't, we're not getting that tricky, really. It sounds like we're kind of proceeding with only very strong hands, and our balance is mostly between whether it's paired or unpaired. And there's not much else to it. This is just a tricky spot that got us handcuffed here. Yep, seems like it. Okay.
yeah, I mean, when people go all in, that the only sense of trickiness is if we're trapping with a hand like aces or king. Like you can't do much. You can't slow play. You can't do. There's not a maneuverability here because the cards are getting shown, right? So
yes,
we can't do this with some like speculative like queen jack suited or something. Like we just have
The other thing that he says is this is a nitty player, right? in here. So is this player doing it with ace queen
Right.
offsuit? Probably not.
Yeah,
They might do it
18
with
big
ace queen
blinds.
suited.
Yeah.
I mean, if it's nitty player, they're under the gun, right?
Yeah. That's true. And
So,
they can just wait a whole other orbit. It's only going to cost them 2 more blinds. They're
right.
not short enough to get desperate. As a nitty player, they might feel like ace queen is not a strong enough hand to shove.
Although I wouldn't mind.
I'm pumped. I'm fist pumping that ace queen in there.
I
Absolutely.
would just actually min raise and call off.
There you go.
There you go.
Oh,
There you
but
go.
but and that was also available to this player, right? So the fact that they chose not to do that should
Right.
tell us something about.
Well, there are certain players who, once they get below a certain, they're never min opening, right?
Right.
They should be, actually, they
Right.
should be. That's something we should talk about, is like, this is not you shouldn't do this with your whole range when you're under the gun. You shouldn't take your 20 big blind stack and just be like, this is shove or fold, right? I think there is a third option that a lot of players, I think, forget about. But yeah, once they do shove, yeah, they're pretty strong.
It's that 15 to 20 big
Yeah.
blinds that people don't know. Like they can still open here. Say they had ace queen offsuit. They can open here to 2 big blinds. If we re-raise them and the other guy shoves in, now they can fold ace queen offsuit.
Right.
If the other guy just shoves in, if we call and the other guy shoves in, they can probably just call. Right? Because we're probably going to fold.
Right. So
does
that
this
take it,
strengthen
Rob.
his range then? I mean, this under the gun player, he's nitty and he open shoves 18 big blinds. And we're saying, well, if you have ace queen, maybe you should just be raising instead of jamming. So what does that make his range then if he's open jamming as a nitty player? Are we looking at aces and kings and queens strictly?
Well, in my mind, nitty players, they don't like to play post flop, really. They're more a tendency to be jamming instead of just raising, because they don't know what to do when they get played back at sometimes.
Yeah, and I think the players like this also, they recognize they're getting short. That does not make them comfortable. They don't like playing post flop. That does not make them comfortable. So I would imagine, I mean, I think the nittier you are, like, it's counterintuitive, but the nittier you are, the more your shoving range expands at this point. Like it starts to become like those 9s and 8s. It's like, well, let's just go for it. I'll get all the chips in the middle, hope everyone folds. And I think so I would expect this range to be even probably ace queen plus and probably 9s plus.
I totally agree with what Chris says.
You guys are the best. So, all right. Well, the only other question that this post brought up in my mind was something that I struggle with all the time. So let's say there's a player to our left who is too aggressive, and they are prone to re-raise with, strong hands, but like second best hands. We are in a position here where we get to choose between, let's say that they told us that they had ace queen, or no, let's say that they told us that they had, what do we have, ace king. Let's say they told us they had queen jack suited or pocket tens, and that if we shoved, they were going to fold, but if we called, they were going to shove. If we're sitting there with ace king, sometimes I feel like, yeah, I know I don't want to go against multiple players here because this is a good hand against one player. So I want to increase my odds of winning the pot. But I also don't want to drive out the exact kind of hands that I kind of want to be going up against in a weaker part of a range that I would then fold out by raising. So obviously if you induce them to get it in, now you've got to actually go to showdown against them with sucks, and they can hit their queen or their jack and upset you. But how do you guys decide like whether to kind of invite this action versus weaker ranges versus just folding out those hands that you just don't want to flip against, even if you're ahead? Maybe it's my cash game background.
Maybe it's your fancy play syndrome.
No, seriously, let's talk about that. Yeah.
I wouldn't want to invite anybody else in with ace king.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
just saying, I just want to go heads up with ace king because the more players you invite in, the less equity realization you are going to have.
Too many live cards.
Mhm.
You're going to be up against too many live cards if you're not already up against a pocket pair.
And what if we had a different hand? Like, let's say we had pocket kings there. I mean, obviously with ace. Well, is that also true with aces? I mean, your odds of winning with aces go down as well when you have more people in. Obviously, you're not as worried about it. But is that also true with aces, or is there something magical about it? Yeah, Chris, you're having a math.
No, I mean, like, that's the thing is like, the more, if we have an overly aggressive player behind us, who's going to be, like you were saying, maybe shoving, if we flat, they're going to shove over the top with queen jack suited and pocket tens were the examples you gave, right?
Yeah.
I don't really want to put 3/4 of my stack in with ace king offsuit against that range. Like, I'm okay. I'm gonna win more than I'm gonna lose, but it's not great, right? I'm
Right.
gonna lose 3/4 of my stack about 45, 54, maybe 50% of the time, like, right? But if I have aces, let's go. I'll take that deal all day, and I will love to double my gigantic stack and make a run at this tournament. And like, if my aces get cracked, by the queen jack suited, when that happens, that's going to happen sometimes, but it's not going to happen as often as when I have ace king.
Right,
but
and that's the need to have that aggressive player behind us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
but that must exist on a spec. I know we're getting a little into the weeds here as we do, but let's say that we had pocket kings, or let's say we had ace king and the other player had king 7. Now, do we want them to overshove and sweeten our pot that we're going to win?
If we do that, yeah, we
We're
would love that.
shoving 18 big blinds with the king 7.
No, but I'm just saying, Matt, like, there must be this place in the middle where, like, the weakness of their hand is such that we actually do want them to get it in against our strong hand. And it's when you only, when you're talking about aces only, obviously that makes it a little different, but there's lots of spots where we could get people dominated in the spot, but we have to invite
Yeah,
that.
I think we have to find, I mean, that has to be like a true maniacal player who's like, there is an under the gun shove for 20 big blinds. There's a flat, which can be should be, you should be like, alarm bells should be going off when somebody flats in this spot, that they at least have a decent holding. And they're going to do this with king 7 off and shove for 65 big blinds. That's a pretty rare player.
Good point. And they have to go to showdown. They're going to have to show down. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good point. Well, all right. I can tell the cash player in me is not nearly as allergic to getting my chips in as some of these tournament masters over here. So that does make a lot of sense. All right. Well, I don't know. Did we get results from this player? I think what ended up happening was a shove and then a call. Our correspondent decided that they were shoving light enough to get it in with ace king, and I don't actually think we did get results.
Well, he did in a later response say that the under the gun player also had ace king and the button player had jacks. Yes. I'm assuming because the other player had ace king that we lose this, which is part of the did I do the right thing? Sometimes we lose hands and then we wonder whether what we did wrong. But so yeah, I assume the jacks held here.
There you go. Yeah, bad spot to be in where the other player also has ace king. That's like a nightmare scenario in that.
So in this particular scenario, whether we raised and isolated or not, we might have seen the same result.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it doesn't change it.
I don't know if they're cold 4 betting. A lot of people won't cold 4 bet jacks.
Oh, I guess if we shoved, would they have called though? I think
no, that's actually a raise 3 bet. Yeah, it'd be a cold 4 bet against the biggest stack on the table.
Yeah, what do they do with jacks then? If we had isolated, raised, or gone
if we haven't, well, he says he hasn't been shown, he's being shown to be tight aggressive.
Yes,
that's how he's been playing.
Yeah.
So I mean, some players will just fold there. Knowing, like, if we've raised to 35 big blinds, we're never folding to his his shove. So he has to know he's either crushed or he's probably racing, right? So depends on the player. It's the
Yeah.
player's read at the time.
Yeah, that makes
So
sense.
he, by isolating,
I
by
don't think they're
doing an
always going
isolation
in.
range, right, by doing an isolation raise, he may have saved himself
Mhm.
some chips.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep, I think so too. All right. Well, thanks, gang. I'm going to next time we do. I'm going to write my own forum post about getting it in good against weak ranges. We could talk about that in more of an isolated situation. So I'm looking forward to that. But
Well,
in
figure
the
out how
mean-
you do that.
yeah, that's right. And then bottle it, right?
Just
But-
be me in the home game. It'll be good.
That's the key. All right. Well, I want to thank Chris, Kim, John, Rob, and Keith for their excellent insight. And of course, Website Amp and Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino. And all of you at home, thank you so much. We'll talk again soon.